yeah, your GPA matters to a degree, and some people might not like me saying this, but in the long run, right? You're not going to get hired because you have a 4.0 GPA, right? If you come into the office and you're stiff as a board and you can't interact with folks and you can't sell or you can't understand the products or you can't just be a good, um, colleague, what's your GPA worth at that point,
Yeah.
right? So it's more like, I think, universities, even high school, they should start, teaching in a way of how do you be a more rounded person when you get out into the working world.
Welcome to the Founder's Journey podcast, where we unravel the life stories of unique and successful entrepreneurs. We will take a deep dive into their highs and lows and over-the-top accomplishments. So get ready for the Founder's Journey podcast with your host, Jimmy Dulambakis. All right, welcome to the show. We have Shuvam today. Nice to see you. How you doing?
Good. How you doing? Excited
I'm
to be
good.
here, bud.
Yeah, I'm excited to have you. I'm looking forward to hearing your story. Shuvam, tell us, where did you grow up? Like, where were you born, or where'd you grow up?
Yeah, so I grew up in Brooklyn, New York, in Borough Park originally. My brother and I, mom and dad. My parents were first generation here, so grew up in Borough Park, and then like around the age of 10, we moved to Bay Ridge, Brooklyn, which where my family still is, still to this day. I live in Boston now, but we moved to Bay Ridge, and then I grew up going to middle school there, high school, and then eventually college, also in Brooklyn.
So your grandparents are from India?
Correct. Yeah. I never met my grandfathers. They passed away before I was born. But yes, my grandmother, both sides, are from India. And then my parents were first generation here. They
And
moved here.
what part of India did they come from?
They came from a place called West Bengal. Calcutta is the city. So eastern part of India. So we're Bengali. And the state, I guess it's called West Bengal.
Any stories from there, from the grandparents, their sacrifice or anything?
You know, I'm bad about that. The short answer is I don't know. I'm sure there are, but the last time I've been to India was 1992, so really long time ago. India has obviously changed a lot. My parents moved here in the 70s to Brooklyn. But yeah, I mean, I'm sure if you look back on the lineage, my parents, especially my dad, he had to go through Middle East, through work, and him and my mom, they got married young, arranged marriage, the traditional path, went through the Middle East, and then migrated eventually to New York.
Oh, so your parents were born in India.
Correct. Yeah.
Okay. So your dad, so let's talk about the path of your dad. You said he had so why did they leave India? Was it because was there a reason?
Yeah, I mean, I think back then, like every immigrant family and immigrant family parents, they wanted a better life. United States was where the jobs were, right? They didn't know if that was the better life, but it's where the jobs were, right? From a dollar's perspective and things like that. Um, and him and some other, my uncle, they all came around the same time to come here. They both worked. My uncle, which is my dad's younger brother, came here, worked in the Transit Authority in New York, right? Working their way up to eventually where they retired from. But yeah, I think that's what they were chasing was I don't want to even say the American dream because I don't even know they knew what the American dream was. I think they just came here for a better situation rather than what was in India at the time.
Yeah. And it's actually interesting, like India is booming now, right? The
Yeah.
economy and so much. So that's fantastic. And so tell me about so you're in Borough Park, which is interesting because I grew up borderline Borough Park.
Okay.
Um and so you were born there, then you moved to Bay Ridge, right?
Yep. Yep.
10 years old, you said?
Around 10. Yep.
Yeah. Okay. What was your like childhood like? Were you Like, was kids playing in the street? Like, what?
Yeah, so Borough Park days, I remember a little bit. So Borough Park, for people that don't know, is a largely Hasidic Jewish community. Still is, right? I think it's the largest Hasidic community in the world outside of Israel. Um, so it was a very interesting childhood where obviously Indian, right? We're living in a predominantly Hasidic Jewish neighborhood. Our best family friends still to this day are Hasidic Jewish, right? We grew up in that culture. So it's very different. There wasn't a lot of playing in the streets and things like that when we were growing up in Borough Park because other kids didn't do that, right? Those kids went to school and then they went to religious studies because of their culture, right? So, we were home. Then when we moved to Bay Ridge, like I said, like 1992-ish, to the house that we still live in now, my parents do, that's when we met, other demographic of kids, Greeks, Italians. So Bay Ridge was a kind of a melting pot of folks, but it was predominantly Greeks, Italians, and Irish, right? That was
Yeah.
what Bay Ridge was made of. So we met a lot of those types of kids in our neighborhood. And that's when we played in the streets and did the normal childhood stuff, right? A lot of kids congregated in our house area because we had a backyard. So we were able to play basketball, we played baseball, we even played badminton. So it was like a whole list of sports, but we were always the house where kids met up. So that was nice. And that's the more traditional childhood. But yeah, the Borough Park days, my brother and I didn't know better, right? So we were home majority of the time. We went to school and then came home. And that was it.
It's interesting, like, now that I think of it, like, my kids are growing up and, like, we used to have disputes, in the street, in the backyard, and
Yeah.
I just don't remember my parents coming out and getting involved, like, they were just like, "Keep it down,
That's
don't
right.
shout," like, they let us
Yeah.
bicker and fight, and I'm
Yeah.
trying to do that here where I'm letting, like, my kids and, like, other kids kinda just work stuff out. Like,
Yeah.
my son will be like, "Hey, like, this happened," whatever, I'm like,
Sure.
maybe you had a bad day or whatever, just
Right.
don't let it bother you, move
Yeah.
on, whatever, right?
Yeah.
But it was definitely like, I remember like my dad was an immigrant, and he didn't really speak English. So like I would tell him, oh, this kid did this to me. And he'd be like, all right.
Yeah. No, that's
Like, just be
exactly yeah.
careful, like it was like very few words. It wasn't like a lot of like hand holding helicopter,
Right.
movements,
That's exactly how our parents were. Like, I remember some of the quote unquote altercations that we would have in our neighborhood, and it would be squashed after a couple hours, right? Like we
Yeah.
didn't fist fight, like there were none of that kind of stuff, right? When we grew up. Yeah, I've never gotten into a fist fight in my life, still to this day. So I knock on wood, I still don't get punched in the face. But yeah, we didn't have those types of situations. And then, you know, having immigrant parents, like my parents didn't understand if I told them I got into a fight with a neighbor. Like my dad would be like, "Well, stop fighting." Right? I mean, that would be the answer, right? Because if you think about our parents' generations, what they had to go through, right? To sacrifice and their quote unquote challenges, our challenges as a kid was nothing compared to theirs, right?
Yeah.
So if we had a fight in the neighborhood, you literally after a couple of hours cooled off and, squashed it, or you slept over it, and then the next day you're back to normal again. And that's literally how it was.
So tell me, you're talking about your parents' sacrifice. Let's talk about like your dad and your mom and how they got to America. You said your dad had to go through the Middle East and
Yeah. Yeah, so, I don't know the full story, and I wish I did. It's one of my, little regrets of not really having those deeper conversations with my dad, and I'll go into why, my dad is going through some severe health issues now with dementia and things like that, but, they went through the Middle East, through Libya specifically, and I don't know why they went through Libya, if it was because of a immigration circumstance, if it was for a job, if it was through just channels to get to U.S. I don't know that direct answer, but you ask about the sacrifice. When they came here, they had very little, number one, from a financial perspective, but number two, from a family perspective, right? So they, moved to Brooklyn in the 70s, and Brooklyn isn't what it is now, right?
Yeah.
Brooklyn in the 70s was very raw and rough, and even in Borough Park, right? Like when you're an outlier of a family, right, Indian, and you're coming into someone else's neighborhood and world, you're looked different upon. I'm not saying in a negative way, you just look different. So it's hard to acclimate. Um, and I don't know those challenges, but what I do remember of my childhood, my dad working the transit authority, working really long times. Like I very rarely saw my dad, right? He would work long days, saved money, came home. We lived in a very small apartment. So it technically was a one bedroom apartment, a large one bedroom that my brother and I shared, like a twin bed next to my parents' bed, right?
Yeah.
And we had another room slash the kitchen was like the laundry room, where there's like a washer dryer in the laundry room, literally right next to the stove. And I used to sit on top of the washing machine, watch my mom cook, right? That's where my mom would sit me, right? Essentially to watch me, right? And then we had the living room, family room area where my brother and I would play, and that's where we would eat, and TV room and all that other stuff, right? But it was, looking back on it, I don't know how a family of four was living in a situation like that with one bathroom. Um, and so yeah, that's
It's
you know that
interesting. It's
that
because
that
I
Go
wanted
ahead.
to jump in. So I grew up in a two bedroom. Me and my brother had bunk beds for a very long time, like
Yeah,
it's like a young teen, like we were teenagers still living in that room,
yeah,
saving because we were like trying to get to that American dream of buying a
yeah,
house and stuff. And unfortunately for us, inflation kept going up, asset values kept going up, and we kept missing it every
sure,
time. We have just not enough to buy that house, just not.
yeah,
And we didn't know about programs, 5% down, 10% down. We thought you had to come up with 20%.
yeah,
But my mom had a washing machine in the kitchen next to the
yeah,
refrigerator, and we would
yeah,
run this black pipe,
yeah,
like a rubber,
yeah,
like extension to the bath, and that's where
yeah.
my mom would dump, like we would dump like
The
the
hose.
yeah, or the
Yeah,
sink or whatever, or to
yeah,
whatever. And then my mom would have to clean the tub because she was worried that it was like bacteria, whatever. So
sure.
like she's running this every day. She's cleaning the tub every day. It was like
Yeah,
insane, you know?
yeah,
And we had these like yellow cabinets from like the 60s
yeah,
and 70s.
yeah,
And it was like, we had an air conditioner that was probably like 50,000 BTUs. 'Cause when you turned it on, it sounded like a jet engine. It was like,
you know,
and the lights would flicker in the whole
yeah.
house,
Oh yeah,
and it was about 1,000 pounds, probably. No,
yeah,
it was probably like 150 pounds.
yeah,
And
yeah,
I'm like, this thing's gonna fall out the window,
yeah.
kill somebody. But anyway, it's similar
Yeah, I
living
mean,
situation. Go
like
ahead.
you talk about the washing machine in the kitchen. When the washing machine turned on, and it's not like the washing machines we have today, right? They're quiet, they're shock proof. We're talking about these washing machines that they would shake, and the floor would shake, and the hose would shake, like everything would shake. And it was like, as we got older, my brother and I, like, there would be times when the washing machine would be on, and my mom would be cooking, and the pressure cooker, like that was a big thing that my
Yeah.
parents used. Those would go off at the same time. We thought the apartment's gonna blow up, right? And I would get scared, and I would, run to my dad as he's trying to nap. My dad get angry at my mom. It was hilarious, right? Like, I look back on it and I'm like, how did they do that with
Yeah.
two kids, right? Like with two kids and managing all that, and they didn't have the technology that we do now, right? Smartphones and all of that kind of stuff. It was I I try to be careful of the word sacrifice, because I think sacrifice could be used in, like, they struggled. My parents didn't struggle, or they didn't show that they struggled, I should
Yeah.
say, to my
Yeah.
brother and I. It was normal for them. To them, this was the upgrade. right? Like this America coming here and having that, like that's awesome for them, right? Compared to their village in the suburbs of Calcutta,
Mm.
right? So I appreciate that now, right? You know, and back when I was younger, obviously I didn't know any better. But looking back on it, that's why I'm always careful of the word sacrifice, because I think sometimes it leads to a path of like, oh, you know, like they like the old saying, like they walked uphill both ways, right? Going
Yeah.
to and from work.
Yeah.
Like my parents definitely sacrificed, but I think to them it was normal and it was an upgrade, right? I think to all immigrants that came to the US, that was the upgrade, right? Being here and having public transportation and having people pick up your trash, right? Um, Going to the supermarket, having electricity for the most part that is reliable and wouldn't turn off, having
Yeah.
running hot water, right? That's all luxuries to them, right? I'd appreciate that more now as I'm older, right? But back then, they didn't know any better, and that was the upgrade. Like my parents never complained a day, right? Like now, granted, I was young, and I'm sure there was many sleepless nights for my parents, right? I'm sure your parents as well,
Yeah.
right? With two kids and all of that kind of stuff, and how do you make ends meet? But the world was different back then too. There wasn't there was competition, but it was friendly competition, right? People genuinely, your neighbors genuinely looked out for you,
Yeah.
right? Like our, I remember we lived in a 3-story apartment, um, kind of like a 3-family house, right? And we were on the second or third floor because I remember there were stairs. I remember the person that lived below us was a Jewish family. This old lady used to always come up and make sure we were good. Always, right? Now, I'm not saying that doesn't happen today, but that is so rare, right? To the point where it's so rare, when it does happen, you see it on social media. People video it now, the fact that it's
Yeah.
happening,
Yeah. It's
right?
sad.
Like it's not norm anymore, right? And I just find that very ironic that um like just shoveling your neighbors in front of their house is that now a good deed when back then we just did it, you know? It was like very normal. So I think like from a societal perspective, the you know what the word neighborly meant has changed a lot.
Yeah.
So I think my what I'm trying to say, Jimmy, a little bit is that my parents, even though they came here with not a lot, they still had a little village that they created for themselves, right? And it's almost like Punch the monkey now in Japan. I don't know if you've heard about this
No,
story.
no.
Punch is this like little monkey that was born that got neglected by his mom, that got thrown out of the tribe. And the zoo in Japan gave him a large stuffed IKEA monkey to act like his mother, right? And he's been clutching this stuffed toy like his mom. And it's been going viral. And he finally got accepted by this other Macau monkey tribe in the zoo. Finally got accepted. It's kind of like what happened to my parents, right? They came from a different tribe, came to the US, lived in a neighborhood that was definitely not their tribe, but they slowly got accepted, right? Because at the end of the
Yeah.
day, it's like, are you a good person, right? And so they finally got accepted, and I think that really helped ground them. And then obviously from there, that laid the foundation for my brother and I, to
Yeah. It's
go.
interesting. Like, back to your point about like just, their upgrade. Like my parents, their goal was we're gonna come here, we're gonna work for 4 or 5 years, make some money, and go back to Greece.
Mhm,
Right? Because that's what people were doing. They were coming here and making some money, and they were coming back, and they were going back and building their homes and whatever.
mhm,
But they fell in love. They met their new tribe, they met the new people, to the point where I had no family. Like none of my aunts and uncles came. They some of them came. They saw New York, how like crazy it was, and like
mhm.
busy, and they're like, "No, I'm going back to the town. I'm going
Sure.
back to the country." Um, and what happened was, we didn't have cousins, aunts, uncles, grandparents, like they were all in Greece.
Yeah.
But so many immigrants, Greek immigrants, had the same situation. So
Yeah.
they became our family.
Yeah.
Like to the point where like they would like, this is Uncle so and so, this is
Yeah.
your aunt
Yeah.
so and so. I'm like,
Yeah.
oh, they're our aunt. Like, growing up, it was just normal. And
Yeah.
like I was like, wow, that's weird,
Yeah.
and actually now growing and being older and stuff, and like I moved out of the city to the suburbs and meeting people. I feel like I guess I was looking for that. I was looking for that tribe, but it
Sure.
takes more time now because if
Yeah.
they're not immigrants or they're not really first generation,
Mhm.
they're kind of a lot of Americans are settled. They're
Yeah.
not trying. They don't need tribe. They have their tribes because they've been
Yeah.
here. They've assimilated. They already have their cousins, their sisters, their brothers, all kind of in this area or close by where they don't need to assimilate, right?
Yeah, I
Um,
mean, and also too, I think the demographic of neighborhoods have changed. More people are, I don't want to say introverts, but like they're just in themselves, amongst themselves, right? They have their own stresses of life and they don't really try to go outside of that for the most part. You definitely have neighborhoods that are the opposite, right? Where everyone's hanging out and things like that. But I think as a whole, yeah, it's hard to go into a different city and as you said, get a tribe, right? And meet people and things like that. It's difficult. I think as we're now, you know, if you look at society as a whole, like I'll give you a real life example for us. When we moved from the city, I live in the Boston area. When we moved from the city into the suburbs, we moved into a very small little neighborhood of 8 homes, cul-de-sac life, as I call it, right? Our neighbors came and met us, right? And all of that. And I looked at my wife, Ravisha, and I said, this is it. This is where we're gonna live, right?
yeah,
Obviously we tore the house, we liked the house and all that stuff. But you could buy your house, you can't choose your neighbors,
yeah, it's true.
right?
It's true.
And our neighbors are our family. We have a group chat, right? We name it the neighborhood family. The wives all hang out, right? Like it is different. And when I say this to my friends, they're like, well, that's weird. Like that's what they say. Like, that's weird. I'm like, what do you mean? Like it hit me that it's just not normal
It's not
that,
normal. It's not common, actually.
yeah, that neighbors are hanging out on a Friday, Saturday night and, they're looking out for one another. Like my neighbors have my door code, right? If anything happens in my house, they could come in and all that stuff and vice versa. Um, and I like that, right? Obviously, it reminds me of how I grew up back in
Yeah.
Brooklyn in the early days. But realizing that that's not normal now, it's kind of sad in a lot of ways, right? Because at the end of the day, we all should be looking out for one another. But I realize that it's definitely we're in the outliers and not the norm.
That's right. So I want
Yeah.
to segue into your school years, right? Going to
Yeah.
school. Were you a good student? What was young Shavam's grade average?
Yeah, dude. So, obviously, you and I know each other from high school, right? So,
Yeah.
which is great that we're connecting it. But middle school, uh, no, I was not a good student at all. I mean, I'll be the first one to admit. Um, I always liked learning. I didn't like the way that schools were teaching. Put it that way, right? Um, but funny quick story. Kindergarten, I got suspended in kindergarten. I don't know how you get suspended in kindergarten, but I got suspended in kindergarten. Why? I didn't do my homework, right? So during nap time, I had to finish my homework while the other kids were napping. And I'll never forget this one kid, was like little desks that you're sitting at as a kindergartner. One kid kept poking me in my back as he's napping and I'm doing my homework, kind of making fun of me. So I turn around and I spit in his face,
Hmm.
right? And I get suspended, right? Like the teacher calls my parents. My parents, now imagine this, right? If immigrant parents from India, they're getting called in because your 5-year-old son's about to get suspended or in trouble. They don't know. So my parents are coming in. They tell what happened. My dad goes, "Why'd you spit on the kid?" And I'm like, "Well, he was needling me, right? Like he was bugging me while I was trying to finish my homework." And my dad was like, "Well, what happens now?" They're like, "Well, he's gonna get suspended. Like, he stays in a different class for a week and all that kind of stuff." And I'll never forget on that drive home, my mom was like in Bengali, she's like, "We gotta send him back to India." All right, we gotta send him back to
Oh,
India.
wow.
Yeah.
So you're like, geez, that's scary.
Oh, yeah, like, "We gotta send him back to India, this kid is gonna be trouble here in the US." Right, that's all my mom was saying, and I'm just, like, smirking in the back seat, right, like a little conniving child. Um, so, yeah, I mean, that was kindergarten, but, yeah, through middle school, I think, listen, I passed, right? So,
Yeah.
I passed, and then I got to high school. Um, Definitely wasn't the greatest student, but there was a tipping point, and I still remember that tipping point. So we went to Port Hamilton High School,
Yeah.
which is in Brooklyn, New York, all right, a public high school. A lot of kids, right? I think it was 4,000 kids in our
Yeah,
high
it's
school
just
at the
it's,
time.
I tell people, like, my nephews and stuff, they go to school, and I think they have, like, maybe, like, 600, 800
Yeah,
kids in their high school. I'm
yeah.
like, "I think we had, like, close to 4,000." I
Yep,
go, "That's a small university." Like,
yep,
that's, like, you know what I mean?
yep.
And we had the modules that
That's
were
right.
built temporarily for a year,
Yeah,
and they lasted, I don't know, 20 years. They kept them there
they're
because
still
they didn't
there.
have enough space. They had to build extensions of
That's
classrooms.
right. The
Yeah.
modules are still there,
Yeah,
FYI.
I know,
They're
that's what
still
I'm
there.
saying, like,
Yeah,
well, hold on, when do we they were there in 90, they built them in, like, 92, so, like, or 93, so they've been there 30 years. Yeah,
yep, yep,
yeah.
they're still there. So, yeah, we went to obviously high school together, but high school, freshman year, sophomore year, I passed. I was probably a B student, maybe C plus, right? I mean, but, C plus to B student, I passed. But then the trigger moment, junior year of high school, for those that don't know, you need to pass health class to graduate. It's one of the requirements of New York City high schools for some reason, right? And, they teach you about health and anatomy and all that kind of stuff. But the health teacher was this gentleman, Roger Canal. I don't know if you remember,
Yeah, I remember.
Mr. Canal. So Mr. Canal was also the golf coach,
Yeah.
right, of Fort Hamilton High School. And I was always good at sports. I was a good basketball player, I was good soccer, I was good baseball, good football, but I'm small, right? I was too small to play in the high school level, right? Because the kids are bigger than me and all that stuff. So I always wanted to play a sport. So Mr. Canal, who was my health teacher, was like, "Hey, you join the golf team, right?" Probably shouldn't say this, but he's like, "I'll pass you." Right? He's like, "I'll pass you in health class." Right? And I was like, "Oh, awesome." Right? I don't have to, like, not that I don't have to go to health class, but I don't really have to do work. But he needed guys for the golf team, right? Now this is 1998. Golf really wasn't as popular as it is today, but there was this young phenom coming out named Tiger Woods that started making golf a little bit popular at that time.
Do you
So
know Can I say something? Do you
yeah,
know that Tiger Woods played at Diker Golf Course? His dad
Tiger
was
Beach golf,
in
yeah.
was stationed there for Hamilton.
Yeah, so his dad, yeah, so for Hamilton Army Base, which is right next door to Dyke Beach Golf Course, his dad was stationed there for a period of time. I don't know if he played there, right? There's many sides to the story, but I know Tiger Woods
Well, the dad
came
played
to
there. The
his
dad
dad
played there.
played
I
there,
don't know if
correct.
Tiger played there, yeah.
I think Tiger was way too young, like, he
Yeah.
was probably an infant, but yeah, so that's how I started, playing golf, right, in high school. I got good fast, but that's kinda what set me on the path. It kind of flipped this switch, and then also senior year of high school, I took this class called Virtual Enterprise, right, at Fort Hamilton High School where, the business teacher slash the teacher of the class, Mrs. Baldari, who's now
Mm.
retired, who actually came to my wedding. Like, she might not know it, but she has changed my life in many ways in business. And I told her that at my wedding. And part of my speech was like dedicated to her, of my
Oh.
wedding speech. Um, but she put me on the path for business coupled with golf. That's when I said, okay, now I have a path, right? That I could follow, right? Because early on in high school, you remember high school back then, right? There was the Greek corner, right? There was all these little cliques. I'm Indian. There was no Indian anything, right? Like we were just trying to find a tribe, right? So
Mm.
luckily, the way my brother and I grew up, we had a list of all different types of friends from all different types of backgrounds. My brother and I never saw, like, we never based anything off of skin color. We don't technically see color in a way. And what I mean by that is that we look at everyone the same. I don't
The
care
same.
if you're African, if you're Greek, if you're Irish, Italian, like you're just a person to me, right? Still to this day, we're like that. So we found, like, growing up, we had all different types of friends. In high school, I had all different types of friends, right? But golf and that business class set me on a path now where I'm like, okay, I could focus. I got good quickly in golf. I did well in high school in golf, and then that got me his college scholarship to LIU, to Long Island University. And then because of the business class, I wanted to study finance. That's what I majored in at university as well. And yeah, and that's what got
So
my high school
so
days.
yeah, so it's interesting because when I was in high school, my goal was just to get a job, to get
Hmm.
like I wanted to be an engineer because I wanted to build things.
Sure.
And I was like, okay, I'm going to go to college, get an engineer degree or whatever, and then go on. I didn't realize how much work an engineering degree was, but I
Yeah.
was like, oh, I'll just figure out like I was just wanted to get a job to make consistent
Yeah.
money because my
Sure.
parents, made some money. They didn't really make that much. So I was like
Yeah.
trying to like next level up. So tell me, so why were you curious in what happened in the business class, that the virtual enterprise that
Yeah.
sparked that fire for you?
Yeah. So I knew that I would struggle in your conventional 9 to 5 job, right? And I didn't even know what that job was, but I seen it from my mom and dad, seeing it from my family, extended family, seeing it from my friends' family. Like, I didn't want to do the 9 to 5 job, right? I always knew that I was going to beat to my own drum in some ways or the other. That business class taught me there was a lot to do with creating your own company, right? Hence virtual enterprise, right? You create your own company. I think at the time I became, so you have to, you get elected to be CEO, CFO, and all that kind of stuff. I was like in the accounting department, right? And I actually had to interview to become like a CFO or chief controller or anything like that. Like it was like a
Mm.
formal process, right? And that's when it hit me. I was like, wow, there's other jobs out there, like what we're doing in virtual enterprise. You could create your own company. You could um, be a CFO within a company, right? And things like that. Obviously, you have to work your way to get there. That's what opened my eyes, right? And then also a portion of the class was in relation to the stock market, right? I didn't really know what the stock market was um, in my early days, and then learning about the stock market and how that works, and being a stockbroker or financial advisor, right? That was different to me. Not your traditional 9 to 5 desk job, right? Every single day was going to be different because a lot of what you do is going to be based off what the stock market is doing, right? And how you get clients and the story that you tell and all of that kind of stuff. So that's what really piqued my interest because it was different, right? Because it was not the norm. I never wanted to be just the 99%, right? I always knew I was going to be the 1%. In what? I had no clue, right? But I knew I was going to do something different compared to the rest of my peers. And that virtual enterprise class showed me that path, that there is a different path that you could take.
It's interesting because I had something similar happen in college. When I went to college, I was like, I'm going to be a civil engineer.
Hmm.
I think I was in freshman year, and I was in some class. There was a glitch, and I go show up to the class. I went already 2 times. I go the third time, and they're like, "Sorry, you've been taken off the roster or whatever." I'm like, "How?" I'm like, so I go to the administrative office. Nobody knows. Everyone's like pointing fingers. They're like, "Listen, the class is full. There was a glitch. We can't get you back in."
Mm.
So I was like, what am I going to do? They're like, well, we have 2 classes open for your major. It could be pre-calculus, I'm sorry, calculus, or we have this other class called small business. I was like,
Hmm.
oh, okay. I was like, I don't know, give me the one that's the least amount of work. She's like, well, I'll put you in small business, right?
Yeah.
This is how, like, I had no idea. So I go into small business, this Professor Lambert, just I'm up my hands. I sat there the first couple of times like, wow, it was really interesting to talk about widgets and products and
Yeah.
it just opened up my mind. And I was asking so many my hand was up the most of the time asking questions. And Professor Lambert's like, can I talk to you after class? He goes, you seems like you have like this real like curiosity for this. We have a group called SIFE, Students in Free Enterprise, where we build business plans and then we go to competitions and we pitch the business.
Sure.
And I was like, all right, I'll come to it. And I went there and it was just, I was like, this is it. This is where I need to be.
Yeah.
And what's crazy is at the same time, my parents were instilling, get the normal job, you need safety, consistency. But
Of
there was this
course.
other voice in my head that kept saying, go create something, go build
No.
something. Like there was
Uh,
this itch that I couldn't cap it and like
yeah.
avoid it or just like, blow out the fire and just like go on. I
Yeah.
tried both for like a year or two, but I
Yeah.
kept finding myself starting these like little businesses
Yeah.
and like to your point, um, that 9 to 5, it wasn't that I didn't want it. I didn't, I wasn't curious about it. I wanted to start something. I wanted to see if I could do it.
Yeah.
Right. I
Well,
wanted,
I think
yeah.
I think the one thing, sorry for interjecting, but
Yeah.
the one thing that for us, and this is where I use the word sacrifice for our family. The sacrifice that our parents made gave us that platform for you and I and our generation to take that risk, right?
Mm.
Our parents came here for safety. Yes, a better life, but the 9 to 5 job, right, was that safety net. No matter what they did. Like we talk about today, a lot of people talk about quality of life, um, work-life balance, right? That's a thing that everyone talks about, right? You ever hear our parents talk about work-life balance, right?
Yeah.
No, because they had to work to have a life, right? So if that means 10 hours a day, 15 hours a day, whatever it was. So that's where I like to use the word sacrifice. That's the sacrifice they made for us, for you and I to take that risk of not having the safety net job of the 9 to 5.
And also, I like recently, not recently, but as I got older, I call my mom and my mom's like, oh, I wish that you and your father and I maybe would have bought a building or did it to help you guys more. And I
Yeah.
said, listen, you did the ultimate sacrifice.
That's
The
right.
fact that you're here, the fact that I have the opportunities
That's right.
that I have, like part of me feels like I have to take the chance.
Yeah,
You
without a
know what I
doubt.
mean? I
Yeah.
have to take the risk on because of what they sacrifice. And my family, not to go too deep, but my grandparents were relocated both sides. One was born in Russia, the other one was born in Turkey.
Mm.
And they had both had prosperous lives. And then geopolitical things
Well,
changed in the early 1900s where they were pushed out of
sure.
their homes and they went back to Greece. And when they went back to Greece, the Greeks were like, you're not real Greeks.
Yeah.
You're like whatever. You're a refugee. You know what I mean?
Right.
So they had to start from zero. So I'm the third generation, right? Where that thing started from zero. My grandparents started from zero. My
Yeah.
parents started from zero, and
Yeah.
now now wherever I am, they've created the platform. So
Sure.
hopefully my kids will live a little bit better, and then so on and so forth. And then
Sure.
we'll go into because I want to talk about generational wealth
Yeah.
and how generational wealth increases and then declines. Right? We'll go
Yeah.
into that later.
Yeah.
All right. So Tommy, so you go to college, you're in Long Island University,
Yeah. Yeah.
right? What
LIU.
happens from there?
Yeah. So LIU playing golf. Like I'll be the first one to admit, like I got a golf scholarship. Parents didn't even know what that meant. Like they didn't understand that you could get your school paid for in golf. My dad thought I was lying, right? Until the day, um, let me take one step back about golf real quick with my family. So my parents are strict Indian parents, okay? And what I mean by that is sundown, we had to be home. They did not want us being out, hanging out with friends because they knew what happens, right? Like they know that not many good things are happening when you're outside as a teenager hanging out, after dark. So, anyways, we had to be home. So golf practice, with the daylight savings times, it's a fall and spring sports. On the fall, when golf is starting, you're forming the team, daylight savings time hits. So it's getting dark at 4 o'clock. But practice is after school, right? So the first practice I go to, it's already after dark, right? My dad's calling. Well, I didn't have a cell phone then. My dad was like, I come home, maybe like 5:30, 6 o'clock. My dad's fuming. He's like, where were you? Right? And I'm like, golf practice. And he's like looking at me. He's like, okay, I've heard all the excuses in the book now, right? You're studying, you're at the library, you're all this. Meanwhile, I was at the pool hall, right? When I told him about that, I was at the library. Um, so now he's like, you're a golf practice. And I'm like, no, I'm dead serious. Like I was at golf practice. You could call the coach and all that. So fast forward like a couple of weeks, he's seeing that I'm doing this consistently, right? One day he actually came. He saw the net that we were hitting into, right? And he was like, okay, I rather him do this, right? I know where he is. He's safe. He's not hanging out. My dad, we go buy like a cheap set of golf clubs from a shop near Diker Beach Golf Course, right? And I got into it. So that now we fast forward into college. Into senior year of high school. I get this golf scholarship. When you get an athletic scholarship, you're allowed to tour the school with the coach. The coach tours you around, introducing you to other team members. So my dad comes with me on the tour, right? Gives it down. So I went to the downtown Brooklyn campus of LIU. That's where all their Division I sports were at the time, off of DeKalb Avenue. So my dad's coming to tour with me and he's confused. He's like, what is this? He's like, my dad asked the question probably like 10 times because he didn't care about how good the school looked and all that kind of stuff. He was like, you're paying for my son to go to school? And they're like, yeah, we're giving him a golf scholarship. And my dad will look at me, they take more of the tour. They showed us the gymnasium, like, golf didn't have a locker room. They showed us the weight room. And I've never been in a weight room in my life, right? Showing us all these things. And my dad asked again, he's like, you're gonna pay for my son to come here to go to school. And they were like, yeah. So fast forward, I'm at LIU playing golf, right? But I look back, this was my immaturity. I had in my head that I'm there to play golf and school was secondary, right? So I didn't focus on school at all, right? Like at all. I barely went to classes there. The classes that I did go, I didn't really enjoy. They were early in the morning. I commuted. I didn't stay on campus. So, we lived in Bay Ridge. So I took the R train and the N train to school. I didn't enjoy it at all, right? And I remember I took accounting, right, part of my finance major. I bought the accounting book, was $185, and
Thick.
I
It
was
was a thick
pissed.
book. It was like
Thick,
cinder
right?
block.
Heavy, and I'm like, this is stupid, right? Like I did not want to be there. I made up excuses. I just didn't enjoy it. In college, now, I didn't know, like, obviously you see on TV what a college atmosphere is like, right? But I didn't obviously have that experience, right? I was there to play golf. But the golf was not fun for me either, right? Because golf became a job, right? They're paying me to go there, right? They gave me a scholarship to go play golf, right? So there was like a routine. We had to go work out. We had to go run the Brooklyn Bridge. Like I was like, how does this make me a better golfer? Right. Like I was always questioning that. So I genuinely did not enjoy it. I thanked them for the opportunity, but it opened my eyes to what being a quote unquote student athlete was like, and it was just not for me, right? But golf was for me, right? I knew that. And golf, like in the summertime when I was playing golf, right? I had the privilege of meeting what I didn't know, but a high profile CEO of a financial company, right? In New York. They're worldwide, but they're headquartered in New York. And he hired me. And he said, listen, if you're willing to come and work for me, I'll hire you, right? It's not going to be a
What
glamorous
year in college were you at the time?
2002. So second year, I
Oh,
was a
so you were going to
sophomore.
drop out to work for them, or you were going to do
Correct.
both?
I was
Okay.
good. I was thinking of doing both, right? But I realized that it was hard to do both,
Okay.
right? To do both. So, yeah, so I left school and I went to go work for him full time. I worked at the corner of his desk, but it's what I wanted to do, right? Similar to your experience, right? When you were going through when you went to that, the business thing, right? And you saw the different things, you're like, this is for me. Even though it wasn't glamorous, it was what I wanted to do, right? And what I was saying before is like, I wanted to learn differently than the way school teaches you, right? There's a curriculum in school. I always liked learning, but I like learning in my way, right? Where like still to this day, right? I'm always reading. I'm always like looking up stuff, like inquisitive. That's what the business world taught me, right? Was to be more worldly in the way you learned than be more structured in the way you learned, right? Because school teaches you right and wrong. In the real world, well, there could be many different ways where you get to the same answer,
Yeah.
right? And
Yeah.
unfortunately, in the school system, there isn't. There's just that way, right? So 2002 worked, and that's been my career from there. But I'll never forget my first day of work. I'm all dressed up, suit and tie. I'm like, oh yeah, I'm the shit, right? Taking the R train to work, and 152 West 57th Street was my first office building I worked at. And I'll never forget, I had to get an ID. I'm scanning in. I'm like, oh, this is the shit, right? This is it. I'm working in a high-rise office building, like what you see on TV. I'm like, I'm doing it now. I was getting paid. I was essentially a coffee boy, right? For these guys, but I loved it. I literally loved it. Like, I learned a lot of what to do. I learned a lot of what not to do, right? I mean, 2002 in the financial world was the wild, wild west, right? Like it was a lot different than what it is now, but it was great for me. And learning through that, like I got my degree doing all that stuff, right? Like a real world experience in the business world and stuff like that. So yeah, it was really cool. So that's really catapulted my business career.
And what did your parents think about this?
Oof, not happy. I mean, I don't think I've shared this with a lot of people, and I'm going to share it to the world right now. So I didn't tell my parents for the longest time that I left school. Like I, I used to wake up in the morning. They thought I was going to school, right? Meanwhile, I'm going to work, right? And the way they found out, you may know this, to have your kids under your health insurance to a certain age, you have to show this transcript to the health insurance company, right? Because if you're still in school, you could be covered until the age of 25, right?
Oh, I
So
didn't know that.
yeah,
Okay.
yeah, you could be if you're still in school,
So
right?
for like
Because
a year, they didn't know, or is that how long ago?
well, more than that. I would say about a year they didn't know.
Yeah.
Okay, because my dad would kept asking for my transcript for the insurance, right? Because he worked at the transit authority, he had city insurance, so city wanted to verify that I was still covered because I was over 21 years old now, right?
Mm,
I was over 18 years old,
18,
right?
yeah.
So they want to make because I'm considered an adult, so they want to make sure that I'm in school. So my dad kept asking for the transcript. I'm like, yeah, I'll get it to you. I'll get it to you. Finally, it came to the point where it's like my dad needed it, so he called the school, right? And I'll never forget. I'm upstairs in our bedroom and at home, and my dad called the school. I didn't know he was calling the school, and all I hear was, "What? My son not in school?" And I knew I was done deal then, right? So dad hangs up the phone, yells my name. I come downstairs. Oh, it was bad. It was bad, right? It was not good. And I obviously I felt terrible, right? But yeah, from my perspective is what I wanted to do. But the worst thing was I had disappointed my parents, right? That's the
It's
worst
tough.
thing, right? Like,
Tough.
you having kids is you living it, right? Like you're gonna do or your kids are gonna do things that are gonna be right and wrong, right? That's just how it is. The worst thing is to disappoint your parents,
Yeah.
right? And I disappointed them. So I didn't my dad didn't talk to me and I didn't talk to my dad for a long time. Like we're still living in the same house, but we didn't talk for like 5 months, 6 months.
Yeah.
Where we started talking again, my dad had, and I probably caused it. That's why I kind of, thinking back is like I take a lot of ownership in this. He had started getting heart issues, like stress. Um, so he had to get a triple bypass. And um, during that time, my mom would call me and say, "Hey, go visit your dad." And I was like, "Yeah, of course I'm going to visit my dad." And that's how we kind of mended our relationship again, right? But from a professional standpoint, I wouldn't change what I did, right?
Yeah.
I mean, granted, I didn't know what I was doing, right? Like I just went, like without knowing how to swim, I jumped into the deep end, right? But very similar to you in a little, I'm like, I'll figure it out, right? Like I have to take this opportunity. When will I ever get an opportunity like that?
Well, that's the thing. You meet this CEO, right, of this company,
Yeah,
and he saw something in you, right?
yeah,
Maybe he didn't think you were going to be like some rock star, but he thought, hey, this guy's got something, right?
sure,
And that's why he's CEO of the company because a lot of
yeah,
them can pick these things out, right? You
yeah,
see the energy, you see the person, like something about them. You're like, I want this person
yeah,
with on our team. When I was in college, my dad passed away. I was 19. It was right after 4 months after 9/11. So 9/11 happens, like doom and gloom, New York City, and then like my
sure,
dad just randomly dies, right?
yeah,
Um, I don't, and it's the week before the finals. So the short version of the story is I don't go and take my finals, so I get incompletes. So
mhm,
I have to go back and submit paperwork, and then they allow me to take it like 3 months later. Now, 3 months later, I don't remember anything from the
sure,
class.
sure,
So I flunk a bunch of the class. My GPA drops, but at the same time, I made a commitment that I'm going to finish school.
yeah,
So I go to school and I'm doing the next semester, I'm doing really well. Like I'm
sure,
rocking A's.
yeah,
But because of I flunked the finals from the pre, it tanked my GPA,
yeah,
and they put me on probation.
mm,
And there was nothing I could do. The next semester, I did pretty good. It
yeah,
wasn't enough.
yeah,
They basically dismissed me from the school.
yeah,
So I'm like, "Oh, shit." But at the same time, I was, like, doing events, I was in marketing, I was like, "I
yeah,
don't really want school." I was at a crossroad where I was like, "Do I really need school? Do I really need to take this philosophical
yeah,
class? Like, is this
yeah,
gonna change my life?" Because I saw my parents, they woke up every morning and went to work. I'm
yeah,
like, I don't know," right? So I'm having this thought in my head. Anyway, the short version of the story is I go to another school, right, to get the credits. They tell me, take these classes. I go to the semester, I do the classes, I come back. They're like, oh, the curriculum changed in the middle of the semester. The classes you took are no longer valid. I was like, are
mm,
you kidding me? I just wasted
yeah,
6 months of my life. So, anyway, so similarly to you, I started to think, is school for me? But at
yeah,
the same time, I made a commitment to my mom that I was going to finish school.
sure,
So for
sure,
3 years, I kind of dilly dally, took some classes, but
yeah,
I started my business. I started my marketing and entertainment business. And I was like so excited, the energy. I was like, I'm learning. I love this. I'm
yeah,
doing things. And I'm like, then I'm going to sit in this classroom for an hour and a half that I have
yeah,
like no interest of.
yeah,
And I'm like, I don't know. My brother finished college. Everybody I know finished college. Like, I started doubting myself.
sure,
But the drive to do the business was
Yeah.
always there. It kept pulling me.
Yeah.
And I'm trying not to get pulled all the way in because I made this commitment. And then at the end, I told my mom, I said, I'm out. I said,
Yeah.
I can't,
Can't
I
do it.
can't do this anymore. It's not working for me. So
Yeah.
in her, in honest, and my mom's always been a great person to,
Yeah.
who's raised me, but she told me, she goes, I just want you to be safe. I want you to be comfortable. I don't want you to struggle like we did. And that was such a powerful comment because it's not that she didn't want me to take risks. It's that she didn't want us to suffer, me and my brother, like they did,
Yeah.
you know?
Yeah.
And I said, I think I'm going to be okay,
Yeah.
And that
Yeah.
was it. That was where I launched my entrepreneurial career from that point
Yeah.
on.
I mean, but if also too, Jimmy, you talked about GPA and all that, right? And I think people get so caught in that number. If you look, I think Wall Street Journal wrote an article on this, and there's many articles on this. They talk about Fortune 100 CEOs, founders, these entrepreneurs that are now billionaires and all that. They look at their like history of school. Majority of them are dropouts, right? Number two, majority of them are like B students, right? And if you peel back the onion of why, they went to school as a resource to meet folks, right? And that's what I kind of tell like a lot of the young people that are in, going through college and want to be in finance and all that kind of stuff. I always tell them, I'm like, listen, pass, right? Like that's the goal, is to pass. Like, yeah, your GPA matters to a degree. And some people might not like me saying this, but in the long run, right? You're not going to get hired because you have a 4.0 GPA, right? If you come into the office and you're stiff as a board and you can't interact with folks and you can't sell or you can't understand the products or you can't just be a good, um, colleague, what's your GPA worth at that point?
Yeah.
Right? So it's more like, I think, universities, even high school, they should start, teaching in a way of how do you be a more rounded person when you get out into the working world by understanding sales, by understanding how to interact with colleagues, conflict resolution,
Yeah.
right? Like those types of things, like real world stuff. And we joked about this when we spoke on the phone a few weeks ago. Like I like math, but the Pythagorean theorem, what in my world am I ever going to use that for? Right?
Yeah.
Unless I'm a contractor, right? Or things like that. But in general, there's a lot of things that we learn in school that are just not useful in normal everyday life, right?
I agree. And
Um,
I mean, look, the school system was built around the farming system, right? They
yeah,
needed to educate the kids to work at factories, work on the
right.
farms. That's where it originated, and it's been very advanced. I mean, I
Yeah,
see stuff that kids are doing in school, super advanced, great.
sure.
One thing that I did in Fort Hamilton in high school was I got somehow hooked into this thing called peer mediation, right? I don't
Mm,
know if you
yeah, I remember
remember it.
that.
You
Yeah, I do.
remember it? The
Yeah,
two kids have a conflict. They trained me how to diffuse the both situations.
yeah,
That was so important that I've
yeah,
been using that my entire life,
yeah,
right?
yeah,
And I think that schools need to incorporate more of that, more of
yeah,
how to deflate conflict,
yeah,
how to be more
yeah,
well-rounded.
yeah.
Sales. I tell every entrepreneur, they're like, "What's one skill I should work on?" Sales.
Bills.
If it
Yeah,
doesn't matter how good you make the product, if you can't sell it, you're not gonna make any money, right?
percent. Yeah,
So
100.
tell me now, so you work for this company. Now let's go into your career, right? So you're
Yeah,
working under this company. You said, I'm running around, I'm being, getting coffee, doing this, whatever,
yeah,
right? Like,
yeah.
what happens?
Yeah, so I learned a lot. I got my licenses. So this is in the financial world. So I got my securities licenses and things like that, right? Studied. I learned about so like it was essentially a stockbroker, right? Financial advisor is the new term that they use, but back then was a stockbroker, right? So I learned a lot about how to sell, cold calling, right? Calling random people to sell a stock, creating pitches, right? So why buy? I'm just going to use an example, Apple stock, right? Why buy Apple stock? So frame the story around that of why Apple stock is better than Google stock, right? So learning that. Um, so I did that for probably 5 to 7 years. Okay. But in that interim, the group that I was working for, the two main partners, young family, was about to have a baby, originally from Massachusetts. Okay. And he wanted to raise his family in Massachusetts. So they moved to Massachusetts. They asked me if I wanted to join them. I was 22, 23 years old at the time. I was like, yeah, why not? I'll move, right? Not thinking anything ahead. I'm like, yeah, I'll move up there. It's close enough to New York, right? Where I could still, visit my folks, but also far enough that they just can't show up, right? And surprise me. So that's what brought me to Boston, right? Was moving to Boston. So that's what brought me to Boston. And then when I moved here, that's when my career kind of took off, in the sense that I got introduced to other firms, other financial firms. So I left the firm that I was at, moved to this other firm. I grew a business there, your traditional stockbroker financial advising business, partnered with another individual, grew there, then left there after about 3 years, went to Morgan Stanley, was the last big firm that I was at. Great experience there, but that's when it hit me that that big corporate world wasn't for me anymore. And I say this in a way where it's not that it's a negative. There's just so many employees, right? You're one of 30,000, right? One of 40,000, right? Your voice kind of gets lost. The entrepreneurial side to you gets lost as well. It's very hard, it's very competitive. But I had the opportunity through golf, right? So obviously, also, let me say this, coinciding and parallel to all this, I'm still playing competitive golf, right? At the state level here in Massachusetts, I was always playing competitive golf, still amateur, but still playing competitive. So I had the so I joined a golf club here in Massachusetts, and I had the opportunity to meet this very wealthy, I didn't know at the time, but a very wealthy Middle Eastern family. Okay. And we were just talking back and forth. His kids in Massachusetts, a lot of Middle Eastern kids go to school here, BU, BC, because of all the universities and colleges that we have here. So there's a lot of, Middle Eastern kids that go to school here. I meet this individual, we hit it off, right? But I don't think anything of it, right? And I keep in touch with him. And I'm still at Morgan Stanley at the time. I keep in touch with him. And then February of 2013 is when I made the move of creating what we call a family office for this individual, right? 6 months of back and forth, we finally said, yeah, let's Shuvam, I'll give you the opportunity to come and run a portion of my dollars in North America, South America, and Europe, right? He gave me that opportunity. I created a formal business plan, all that kind of stuff. So I left Morgan Stanley February 2013, and then that's when I started my firm, SB Investment Partners. Side note, the SB, happenstance, we share the same initials, right? But a lot of people think it's named after me. It's actually not. It's named after my first family, and we share the same initials. So I kept the initials, and I never really correct anybody when they assume. But yeah, I've been doing that since 2013. We've now morphed into a multifamily office advisory firm. About 35 families domestic, and we have about 55 advisory clients total, families, high net worth, ultra high net worth families, all over, mostly domestic, but we have some international families as well. But but golf was the door opener, right, for me. Like, I'm fortunate enough that I play at a decent level where people want to play with me, number one, which is great. I'm personable on the golf course, right? It's not about me unless I'm in a competitive space, right? But when I'm playing with clients and things like that, it's all about them, right? And people like that. And golf is the ultimate equalizer, right? So you could be a Fortune 100 company CEO, right? But when you come into my domain, which is the golf course, right, it normalizes them and it humbles them, right? It's so funny of how that happens. And then you're with the individual for 3.5, 4 hours, right? So I'm picking their brain and they're picking my brain about golf. right? And here I am, I'm picking their brain about business and life and how they got started. So, and I take it for granted a lot, Jimmy. Like I'm fortunate if I got still to this day, I'm able to play with a lot of like what most people would think influential people, athletes, entertainers, CEOs, and stuff like that. But to me, they're just normal people because I know them from the golf world, right?
Yeah.
I'm like, oh yeah, that guy's a good golfer. That guy's a crap golfer, but I just know them from golf, right? Yeah, what they do externally, yeah, they obviously shot a basketball really well, or they hit a baseball really well, or they're incredible in front of the camera from a movie perspective and stuff like that, or in a boardroom. But I don't look at them that way, right? And I hope they appreciate that vice versa because they want to be treated normal. And I think that's why a lot of athletes or stars and or these business people
Yes.
play golf because it gets them away from their quote unquote normal life, right? Where they just go and just be competitive, try to be as normal as possible in this country club setting, right? Um, so it's yeah, I owe a lot to the world of golf when it comes to my professional well-being and personal too. Just to touch on, like, it saved me a lot. Like you remember growing up in Brooklyn at the time, there was a lot of bad, right, with some of the friends that we were hanging out with and things like that. A lot of people took the wrong path, right? I'm sure some of our mutual friends, some of the kids that we grew up with, unfortunately, some are not with us anymore. Some have taken the path of, the illegal kind where they might be in jail and all that. It's sad, but that's just the reality, right? Golf kept me away from that. And that was the one thing from my parents, which was a very comfort because we had Dyker Beach Golf Course, a 10-minute walk from our house, right? Which is rare in an urban environment that you had
Yeah.
a public golf
It's
course.
crazy. Yeah.
So,
Sometimes I really forgot that it was there, like,
yeah,
because you just,
yeah.
yeah.
So sun up till sundown, I was at the golf course. Now, we could talk about this later, but what they didn't know what was happening at the golf course was that there's gambling. There's a whole different world at a
Drinking. Yeah. Yeah.
public
Yeah.
golf
Yeah.
course,
Yeah.
right?
Yeah.
Where to my parents was I wasn't on the street, right? Like I'm in a safe place. And we talk about tribe and family. Those people I met at Dyker Beach Golf Course still to this day are my family, right? Like these old Italian and Irish guys, your cops, your firemen, your sanitation workers, right? Your blue collar people. Still to this day, I talk to them, Jimmy. Like we're talking about 30 plus, 25 plus years, right? Um, I still to this day talk to them. Several of them came to my wedding, right? Like they are my family. I grew up with them, right? And you talked about 9/11 a little bit, right? 9/11 happened in Brooklyn, very scary place for immigrants, especially people of Indian descent or Middle Eastern descent, right? It was just scary for them because unfortunately people looked at them like they were the ones that did it, right?
Yeah.
And we
Yeah.
heard all the horror stories of what happened to people with convenience stores and gas station workers and all that. Those guys at the golf course said, "We're gonna look after you and your family, right? No matter what." And it didn't hit me at the time, but like what they were talking about, because like I said before, I didn't see color, right? Like everyone's
Mm.
the same person to me. But after 9/11, that's when I saw that the world was different than the way I saw it, right? So I wanted to just mention that point when it comes to golf, as we're talking about my business life and growing up, like that was a big part of my life, like the Dyker Beach experience there. And then, still is to this day. Every time I go home, I go visit the guys back at the club and see them and things like that. Obviously, they're a lot older, out of shape, not in great health and stuff like that. But, like I said, they're family to me.
That's awesome. And, I had a similar situation with basketball. I kind of fell into basketball and just was obsessed with it. And because of basketball, I remember my dad telling me, listen, if you want to be good at basketball, you can't be doing drugs. You can't
Mhm.
be drinking and all that stuff. Right.
Yeah.
So I said, okay, I'm good. I'm not going to do that stuff.
Yeah.
And when other kids or whatever peer pressure, they're like, come on, let's go. I'm all right. I'm all right.
Same.
I'm good. I got to go to practice. I got to go shoot the
Right.
ball around. And be like, this guy's all he cares about is sports. So they would leave me
Yeah.
alone. They wouldn't even
Yeah.
bother me, to be honest, and
Yeah.
I was kind of naive. I didn't realize that how much drugs were, circulating through the school
Yeah.
system, right?
Yeah.
I'm not saying like they were dealing in the classrooms, but
Yeah.
like the amount of kids and at the time smoking marijuana was illegal,
Sure.
right? And that was
Yeah.
like everywhere. I didn't even realize it, and then
Yeah.
other things and whatever.
Yeah.
My parents were very like, you can't do those things, but they never
Yeah.
explained to me why,
Yeah.
except my dad. My dad explained to me that like there was a guy actually on the street. He looked kind of like, I guess you call him like somebody, a crackhead who, that's
Sure.
like the New York term, but, like neurologically, he's just scratching, he's,
Yeah.
whatever. And, I saw him and my dad goes, "You see that guy?" He goes, "He came from Europe. He came from Greece.
Yeah.
He finished, college. He was gonna have a good life. He got mixed up with drugs and now he lives on the street." He goes,
Yeah.
"If you do drugs, you're gonna be like that." And I don't
Yeah.
know what it was, the raw images of
Sure.
seeing that person in that
Yeah.
state scared the
Yeah.
crap out of me, and I was like, "I'm
Yeah.
good. I'm not gonna do that stuff." So,
Yeah.
I wanna talk to you about the family office
Sure.
I guess, can you talk about what the family office is and does?
Sure.
And then the third part is, what are things that an average person can understand about finance,
Yeah.
right? Like,
Yeah.
overall.
Yeah. So high level of family office is just a structure for a family, probably of significant net worth, to manage their own investments and their own estate. And what I mean by estate, of their financials, right? Internal financial. That's the very basic definition of a family office. What we do specifically is I act as their chief investment officer, CIO, right? Where I handle as big as their investments, right?
Right. Oh,
External investments or
easy.
internal investments if they have a company business and things like that. I also do a lot of their strategic planning, right? So tax planning, insurance planning, estate planning, right? So when you get to a certain level of net worth, it's nice, but you have more complexities, right? As your zeros get larger, complexities also get larger, right? And that's when families come to individuals or firms like us to look for advice on, okay, how do I manage this? Or how do I think about this? If they have kids, how do I get my kids involved in those conversations? Something we do a lot of is legacy planning, and what I call family foundation, right? How do you want your kids involved? Some families say, I don't want my kids to inherit anything. Some families say, I want my kids involved from day one, right? So every family dynamic is different. But that's kind of what we do in a 30,000-foot overview, right? We oversee families. I don't want to say wealth management, but financial management is probably the best word.
Could you explain, like, so what's the situations like I mentioned earlier about the wealth cycle, right, through generations?
Mhm.
What is, I don't know, I mean, statistically, like, the first generation is someone that builds wealth, usually typically through entrepreneurship, business, or building of
Correct.
assets, right? Maybe they have a job, but they're also buying real estate or something, right?
Yeah.
Then is it the second generation then grows that? And then the third
Yeah.
generation enjoys it, the fourth generation blows it, and then the fifth generation starts over? Is that how it is?
Yeah, so the old adage is typically when it gets to the third generation, that's when you start seeing a decline. I think that's slowly changing now, because there's just more information available for
Mhm.
the third generation to prolong it. But typically, yes, first generation creates it. They take the risk, they create it. Second generation then grows it, prolongs it, before third generation were the ones to then lose it. Like, as they're enjoying it, they're losing it, right? And then fourth generation doesn't even have it, right? Now I think that's changing. To answer your second question from previous of, like, where is information available for family, like financial wealth, the knowledge and all that. Information is abundance today, right? And now with the world of AI, right? Like, information is literally at your fingertips, right? Um, somewhat factual, right? But information is there. I think now with families that are involved in family businesses, right? Generational wealth, why it's lasting longer now is that they're able to now internally manage it better. Okay. Before like there were systems in place and information readily available, families struggled, right? So where is always the biggest family conflict? It's always over money. Always, right? When an heir dies or a matriarch or patriarch passes away, instead of the family coming together as a unit and celebrating the life and working everything out, you hear these horror stories of people getting together and complaining like, I should have had that and I should have had this, and daddy loved me more, right? Like all this kind of stuff. Like it's sad, but that's what happens, right? Because money has no friends and money has no family. I think now with the world of information and just traditional estate planning, people are taking care of that sooner, right? That's kind
Mm.
of what we do a lot, is we lay out a plan, right, of what's going to happen with the son, the daughter, the aunt, the uncle, and all these other family members that are involved. What's going to happen? Me being the CIO, I take that ownership because I have seen what happens when you don't have it in place. Someone
Could you give it?
tragically,
Could you give us a couple examples or example
yeah.
two?
So like, you know, for example, a family grew this business successful, like, $300-400 million business, right? All of a sudden, the father, the CEO slash the father passes away, like heart attack on vacation with the family.
Sure.
Okay. Now, as they're dealing with the grievances, there's this huge business side that has to be taken care of, right? The father didn't have an estate plan set up, didn't have a will set up. What happens now? That goes to court, right? So now
Probate.
probate,
Mm.
correct. All that probate takes over. That takes years to figure that out, right? Then you see family members coming out of the woodwork, right? Saying, oh, well, I was a part of this, I was a part of that. How couldn't you prove anything? All this time that it's in probate, it's just eating at the estate, the dollars. It's just eating away and eating away, right? Meanwhile, you still have family members grieving that they just lost their father, their husband, their brother, and all these types of things, right? So when I'm in that situation, when I'm being in that situation, like my hands are tied. Like you can't do anything after the fact, right? So I always say the analogy that I use is you don't get insurance after you get into a car accident,
Yeah.
right? You get it before. You may never use it. You may look at it as a waste of money until that one day, knock on wood, it never happens, but until that one day happens. It's the same thing now, right? Where families are getting more proactive of that. They're getting ahead. Not that they think that they're going to pass away anytime soon. Just in case that they ever do, they don't want a financial burden, right?
Mm.
That's the one thing that I think people don't talk enough about, Jimmy, is that when a family member dies, there's obviously the emotional aspect, but never you ever hear about the financial burden that comes with that, right? Especially if you're a housewife, right? Or a house husband, right? And your spouse was the primary breadwinner and took care of the finances of the house. And then all of a sudden they pass away. You don't even know where things are,
Yeah.
right? Like, where are the bank accounts? Like, where's the login, right? Like, what's where? What's the insurance and all that stuff? So one of the things that I did, I don't have kids, but obviously, my wife, I put everything into a Google sheet for her with my passwords, with everything. This is where everything is, right? In case anything happens to me, this is where everything is. You're the beneficiaries already on everything, like all my financial accounts. She's the beneficiary as well as my brother, right? Um, everything's right there. I structured it today. It took me, probably a week to do all of that, but I have the comfort of knowing that God forbid something were to happen to me, that they'll be okay financially, right? And then they could go through the grieving process. But you don't want to go through two processes, both emotional as well as financial, right? Because that's where the financial burden adds the most stress to the grieving spouse or
Yeah.
family during that process, right? So, we as a family office, right, we take all of that ownership. I take all of that on my plate, right? Acting as the family CIO, a lot of people focus just on the I portion, the investment portion. Like, to me, as CIO, we handle everything within a family's finances, right? To let them keep doing what they're doing, and more so being able to sleep at night.
You know, I was gonna say is what you did with the spreadsheet. I did the same thing, right?
Yeah.
So I always said to my wife, "Hey, if God forbid something happens to me," I've been to the bank several times where I hear the spouse or the child saying, "Yeah, so and so passed away. I'm trying to get access to their accounts,"
Yeah.
and they're like, "You have to fill out this form and wait 2 weeks,"
That's right.
and it's like a nightmare, right? So I
Yeah.
said to my wife, I said, "Here's the accounts. Here's
Yeah.
the login. I'm old school. My
Yeah.
money is your money. Your money." You know what I'm saying?
Yeah.
Like I know that some people have split accounts. I think that every couple should have like an individual account with their own money
Sure.
in there to do their own things. Like I don't think
Sure.
like one spouse should be dominating the finances of another spouse,
Yeah.
even if one spouse is a stay-home person.
Yeah. Yeah.
I dig. But in the end, what are we doing? We're a family, we're a
Yeah.
tribe.
That's right.
Whether you have kids or not, you're building wealth together, right?
That's
So
right.
one person's
Yeah.
working, two people, whatever. But the point is like, I just never understood that. Like, I always thought that like if we have our money separated, we're set up to divorce,
Yeah.
right? It's a clean escape.
Yeah. Yeah.
So
Yeah.
are you in or are you out?
Right.
Right?
Right.
Now, in some
Yeah.
situ you know what I'm saying? I mean, look, I know I'm sure that some people have and the other part is, like, where I wanted to ask you is, when you marry somebody that is wealthy or comes from a wealthy family,
Mhm.
it's tough because, like, you're both not starting from 0, right?
Yeah.
So
Yeah.
it gets tricky, you know?
Yeah. I mean, on your point before on the bank accounts, I could see both sides to that, right? Having joint accounts is definitely great, right? If you have that type of unit, having separate accounts is also fine, right? And what I mean by that is that it's all up here, right? It's all your intention, right? If you're going into it, like, prenups are a big thing with wealthy individuals, right? And the one thing I'm going to leave my own personal opinion out of it for 1 second. From a business perspective, I completely understand it, right? I get that point of why to do it and all of that. From a personal perspective, I'm on the fence. Why? Because you're setting yourself up, like you just said. Like, are we, is this like for a portion of time that we're going to be married and
It's
then we're
like
going to say,
yeah.
yeah, is it like, like 10 years and then we're good and then we're splitting off and all that? So it, it, it leads into the negative connotation of the marriage, right? So, like I said, I see both sides to it, right? Yes, it's a protection tool from a professional standpoint, but it could also lead to some emotional heartaches, right, on a personal standpoint, right?
So
And
so now so now I wanna put a different hat on. Now
yeah,
I'm the dad that's
yeah,
building wealth and
yeah,
leaving money to my kids.
yeah,
Right? So on that perspective, well, if my kids marry someone that's lazy or
yeah,
doesn't want to work hard and they're
sure,
eating up the wealth that I left my kids, well, yeah, that's going to piss me off, right?
yeah, yeah,
So it's, it's again the wealth cycle, right? So
yeah,
can you tell us like if you had to give somebody like 3 things to do, right?
mhm,
You said to have a spreadsheet with all the information, beneficiary set up, and all that.
mhm,
What would be 3 things to protect your family and also be able to build wealth?
sure. So from a protection standpoint, most of the time, family's biggest asset is what? Their house. So you have to protect your roof. Okay. And how do you protect your roof? You could do that via insurance, right? And I'm not talking about homeowners insurance. I'm talking about if you pass, making sure you have enough insurance coverage on your death benefit that it will cover the mortgage and some. Right. So that headache for your spouse is taken care of because that's typically where the stress is the house. As you see, most of the time when there is a divorce or a death, people have to sell the house because they can't afford it.
Yeah.
Right. That's why, because they didn't plan for that. That's the first thing my wife and I did. Right. When we got married, we both got insurance on each other. Right. To make, I joke around. I'm worth more debt to my wife than alive.
I've
So
heard that. I've heard people
yeah,
say
yeah.
that
So,
before. Yeah.
but being serious, like we did that because I want to make sure that the house is covered, right? That she wouldn't have to worry about the mortgage and all of that other stuff and the expenses that relate to the house. So that's number one. Number two, it becomes more individualistic, right? Like, what do you want to do if you have a family, right? So let me say this: no kids or no family, right? It's kind of easier, right? There's not much for you to really protect and things like that, unless you have a business that you did together and stuff like that. But if it's just like your conventional, husband, wife, no kids, and you're working, he's working, right? Then it's just beneficiary stuff, and there's not much there, right? Other than the emotional stuff. When you do have a family, if you have kids, there's a lot, right? So making sure colleges, right, are taken care of. You could do all that through insurance, right? The death benefit. So when you underwrite insurance at a young age or a young family age, right, get as much. I don't want to say as much death benefit coverage, but I would get as much coverage where, God forbid, something were to happen to you, right? Um, you could obviously do the normal investment accounts for your kids and your family and stuff like that. But I would do that, right? So you protect your family is number two, right? And a lot of people do that through, again, insurance. And I'm not trying to sell insurance. I'm not an insurance advisor in any
Yeah.
way, right? But I'm just saying that's a protection tool. And then the third thing to protect, this is going to sound like a weird one, but legacy. Okay. And what I mean by that is if you're married and you pass away, right? It's very unrealistic to think that your spouse is not going to love again. Okay. They may get married again, right? And it's harder for women to go through that. The stigma that they have, right? Like, oh, you remarried. Well, yeah, what did you expect her to do? Right? I mean, she also has to be. It's easier for guys to do that, right? Oh, my wife passed away a couple of years down the line. I'm remarried, right? Because
Oh,
I
you're
mean,
saying statistically, men will remarry more than women would if they
no,
are.
I don't think statistically. I just think the stigma around it,
Oh, I see. Okay.
right? Like, there's like, I think, and it's changing now, right? But back in the day, and I'm like, if you look at our parents' generation, right? If the husband passed away, the wife traditionally never remarries,
Yeah.
right? They just stay single or a widow and they raise the family, right? But if you ever ask them, they're probably depressed. They're probably not happy,
Yeah.
right? Like
Yeah.
they're just putting on this facade for the kids to raise the kids and be strong. That's fine, right? But they're not happy. I think today it's more commonplace where the wife does fall in love again, right? And I think that's great, and the kids accept it, um, because it's just another chapter, right? Like, unfortunately, the husband or the significant other passed away, and
Yeah.
same thing for the husband side, right? Like, I think they should. Now, going back to what you're saying about legacy protection, right? One thing we do, Jimmy, when I onboard a new family, and even existing families, because it's always an ever changing document, is something called an investment policy statement. Okay. We have your normal investment stuff, estate planning, financial planning, tax planning, insurance planning, all that, right? That's one piece of the document. But then the main piece of the document I focus on is legacy, right? What do you want to leave, both tangible and intangible, in the future with your family? Okay, if you were to pass on, how do you want your family to live? What types of values do you want them to have, right? And this is where I bring on, if your spouse is going to remarry, right? Because if your spouse remarries some individual that's a deadbeat that's just going to milk whatever you build, like, do you want that? So you kind of have to instill that in your family values today, right? And a lot of people think they have family values. Majority do, but majority don't know what that is until they put that down on a piece of paper,
Yeah.
right? So the one thing that I always tell people to do, regardless of where you're at in a net worth perspective, you should have an investment policy statement, right? And it's easy to get a template. I mean, with the world of AI, you could do it through AI now and all that, but you should always have one, right? Because what do you want to do? Like, how do you want to be remembered? Where do you want dollars to go in the future, right?
So that's
Like,
that's that's interesting. I don't mean to cut you off. I wanted to talk a little bit about that because, like, obviously, I want to leave an estate or a trust, right?
Mhm.
And my thing is, like you mentioned earlier, some wealthy people say, "No, I'm not going to leave my kids any money,"
Yep.
right? Because they want them to work for it.
Yeah.
Some are like, "Well, of course, I'm going to leave them money."
Mhm.
And if you leave the money, how? What is
Yeah.
the mechanism of leaving them the money?
Yeah.
So and again, I'm obviously still working on this, but I thought to myself, well, okay, what if there was a life events where they can access the money, where the
Sure.
money just doesn't come to them, okay?
Yeah.
And the way they access is through education. They
Mhm.
want to start a business.
Mhm.
They want to buy a home,
Mhm.
right? Or they have medical issues,
Mhm.
okay?
Mhm.
But how do you know, like, in the future what's going to happen, what houses are worth, what's this,
Sure.
and is there enough money in there? Like, how can I leave an estate or a trust that will grow for generations?
Yeah. Yeah. I mean, if you're asking me the question from a tangible perspective, the easy way to say is, one, you don't know, right? So, of like what dollar amount to leave. Like
Or maybe it's
that's
a
the art.
percentage. Maybe it's based on the medium house or
Yeah.
whatever.
Yeah. I mean, that's a better way to do it, right? But that dollar amount is going to be different for different families, right? Depending on what your net worth is today,
Yeah.
right? So 10% of a guy worth $1 billion of liquidity, right? It's a lot different than a 10% of a guy worth $10 million, right? So
Yeah.
it's all relative. But with that said, I think having that foundation in place is important. Now, what you're saying of like having your kids have access to that as they're going through life, that's one way to look at it, right? So there's, you know, um, legal entities like trusts that you could structure all of that stuff. It's all in the agreement, in the trust agreement, that you could do all that stuff. So anything is possible, right? But going back to the crux of this is that how, why, those are the questions you want to answer,
That's
and
the foundation.
having your kids answer that, right? Because, like, the old adage of like a trust fund kid, right? We always hear that, right? Oh, this kid's a trust fund kid. I push back on that. You can't help how you grew up. You can't help if your mom and dad were successful entrepreneurs, right? Like, I don't know if Jeff Bezos has kids or not, but if Jeff Bezos has kids,
Yeah.
they can't help that Jeff Bezos created Amazon, right? They can't help that, right? So obviously they're going to grow up in a very world of privilege, right? But what it's Jeff Bezos's responsibility to his kids to say to them, yes, we have an abundance of surplus. But with that said, this is what we want to do as a family with that surplus, right? This is how I want you to be a steward of the capital. You see that with Buffett's kids. You see that with Gates' kids, right? To some degree. And I don't know specifically what they do, but you do see a lot of the generations where to us, they may not have to work, but they're involved in the family foundation and the family philanthropic efforts, right? And the family charitable events, that they continue to pass on their legacy of that family, right? Rockefellers is a perfect example of this, right? Um, I mean, there's a lot of families that do this that are
Well,
not in the limelight.
I wanted to ask you because what based on I don't know everything that the Rockefellers do, but there's always comparison between Vanderbilts and Rockefellers and how they
Yeah,
both had money and how the Vanderbilts never spent it,
yeah,
and the Rockefellers continue. And I read the book on it, how to create your own bank, I think, and
yeah.
they
Infinite
talk
banking.
about they talk about taking out life insurance policies on
Yeah.
the kids. So how does it work with the Rockefellers? Does the insurance policy for a newborn Rockefeller fund their life event? Like, how does it work?
Yes and no. So the infinite banking that you're referring to is not necessarily on the kids. It's on the individual. Let's just say I'm the father and then I have a son. Okay. I take a policy out on myself. They're the benefit, my son is the beneficiary of that policy. So the death benefit, all that flows down to them. They then do the same thing and they flow down to them. Now, yes, you could utilize the cash value of the insurance policy, right? The dollars, the premium dollars that you are putting in, you can borrow against that for life events, right? Whatever life events are, right? Some people buy, some people invest it, some people use it for house, they buy a house, some people use it for education. Whatever your life events are, you could utilize the cash value of the life insurance policy. But that's what the Rockefellers did was they used the insurance world to keep once one passes away, the death benefit flows down to the next generation, so on and so forth. There was
But does
this
it flow
slinky
into the
effect,
trust and then the trust distributes it, or does it go straight to the kids?
depending on how they structure it. I don't know
Yeah,
specifically how they
yeah, that's what I'm
structured it,
interested. Yeah,
but I think knowing them, they probably did it into trusts.
that's what I'm thinking.
Yeah.
I'm thinking it
Yeah,
goes into
knowing
the
them, they
trust.
probably did
And
it
then the
into
trust keeps compounding, growing. That's
correct.
why generationally it's become so
That's
massive.
right. That's right.
Um,
Yeah.
so tell me, is there any shortfalls that you see family offices or wealthy people run into? We've talked a few about, how
Yeah.
to leave the money and stuff, but anything else that you want to touch on?
Yeah, I mean, I think the biggest, concern for ultra high net worth people in general is, they become targets from, um, security issues, right? It could be from a physical security issue, right? Or, um, online hacking, right? Where people try to go after them, right? That's number 1. Number 2, reputational risk, right? I always say this to my families. The wealthy you get, the less I want you to know, less I want people to know about you, right? Like that's what you want. You want anonymity as you get wealthier. Okay. And there's a lot of people walking amongst us, Jimmy, that are extremely wealthy that we will never know about. Right. And I think that's great. Right. Unfortunately, out of people's control, sometimes you can't have that, right? Just because of the world that you're in and the way you built your wealth and things like that. But those are the two biggest things is that you become targets, right? And security are the biggest concerns. Obviously, they don't have to worry financially, right? Now, that doesn't mean they don't have stresses, right? To you and I, it seems like, oh, this is great, right? I have all this money and I could do whatever you want. Yeah, to the most part, yes, they could do whatever we think they could do whatever they want, right? But when you get to a different levels of net worth, what you do on a normal basis changes, right? So my business mentor, when I got started in the business, who gave me the opportunity, unfortunately passed away from cancer. He was a billionaire, right? He became a billionaire. And I saw his life. His life was not normal to me, right? He had a driver, right? And all these types of things, kids getting picked up at school with a chauffeur, and he had a driver, he had his own personal jet, all these things. And I thought this is amazing, right? But what I realized as I got older is he needed all that because he couldn't have, you know, the norm, like he can't just go JetBlue to Florida,
Yeah.
right? Like people would recognize him and you'd become a target, right? It's happened a lot, right? In people with net worth, like you get taken for ransoms and things. So it's like I said, the security factor. Um, yeah, so security and reputational risk is the biggest concerns for a lot of my families. The reputational side, I think some families don't even care about because people are gonna run you through the mud, right? No matter what. Like you'll see Jeff Bezos, I used him as an example. You read some comments, greatest entrepreneur on the planet. You read the other side, biggest D-bag, right? Elon Musk, greatest mind in our world. You read the other side of the comments, the guy is this, because he gotten himself involved politically, right?
Yeah.
So there's always, two sides to that.
So we'll wrap up in a little bit, but I wanted to touch base on entrepreneurship.
Yeah.
What's your mind frame on entrepreneurship, and what do you think? And the second part of the question would be, what's your relationship with failure?
Great question on both parts. But first question, I think everyone should try to
Try.
be an
Yeah.
entrepreneur
Right.
in the beginning. Um,
No.
you'll may succeed, but this will lead into the second part of your question. You're definitely going to fail, right? And I always said like people should learn the F word really quickly, right? And the F word is failure, because I think failure, a winner is a loser that just never quit,
Hmm.
right? That's what a winner is, right? Like you just don't go and just win, right? And that's why like in golf, I never lose in golf. I only learn in golf, right? Because either I win or I learn. And every learnings from rounds or tournaments gets me to that, hopefully, to that moment of winning. And that's why you see a lot now of people say, enjoy the journey and not the result, right? Because when you get to that, whatever result you are trying to strive for, you're like, that's it, right? Like, what's next? Okay, I got it. Now, what's next? So I think everyone should try to be an entrepreneur, right? It doesn't matter what it is. Like, you don't need to create a company, right? But try to have that mindset of creating something from whatever instance, right? Out of a need, out of a want, if you want to be an entrepreneur. But also, I think entrepreneurship is getting a little bit publicized and romanticized a little bit as
Yeah.
well. Okay. So I always say there's entrepreneurs and wantrepreneurs. Okay. People want to be an entrepreneur, but entrepreneurs are willing to be gritty, right? And hard work and sleepless nights and all that, right? There's a lot of entrepreneurs out there that they see the social media aspect of it and, oh, I did this. And to me, they're not entrepreneurs, right? To me, they're just creating a business and they probably came from some successful means. Um, and they want to do this for the limelight, right? Like that's not an entrepreneur. An entrepreneur to me is a guy that's having sleepless nights, right? That don't know where his next paycheck is going to come from. If he's going out and raising investor capital, he's just collecting no's every single phone call or every single meeting, but he's not giving up. That's an entrepreneur. If that guy or that gal fails, kudos to you, right? You are in the arena, right?
Yeah.
So being in the arena is entrepreneurship. Second part of your question of what is my relationship with failure? I love failure, right? Failure has been my life. Like I've failed a lot, right? School failed, right? I mean, I have, but on a ladder, every step of failure led me to where I am today. I still fail today, right? I sometimes fail as a husband, but I learn from it. I sometimes fail as a CIO, but I learn from it. I sometimes fail my clients, but I learn from it. You could take failure and just cower and go to bed, right? And never like try to deal with it. Or you could reframe yourself and say, okay, what did that moment teach me? Right? Failure is the ultimate teacher. period, right? Going back to our whole education, like you don't learn that in school. You had incompletes, right? As you were talking
Yeah.
about the life
Yeah.
events that you were going through, the teachers didn't give a shit, right? Like they just said, you failed, you got to take your classes and stuff. Well, what did you learn out of that? What you learned was this isn't for me. That's what you learned out of it, right? And that's the reframing that I consistently do.
You
I
know,
do that.
you know what else happened was you mentioned earlier on about your community having your back, right? Your neighbors having your back, right?
Yeah. Yeah.
What happened in college was when I had a bad situation, there was nobody had my back. There was
Yeah.
actually one counselor that was he was when it happened, they had to let me go. Like he was like, he told me what to do. And he's like, Jimmy, you
Sure.
gotta get your grades up. Bro, I rocked A's. Next
Yeah.
semester, A's. But
Yeah.
because of the way the formula worked, and he
Yeah.
goes, I'm so sorry, like I'm gonna have to dismiss you.
Yeah.
And I was like, and I think he was more upset than me.
Sure. Sure.
You know what I mean?
Yeah. Yeah.
But outside of that, no one else at the school had my back. No one
Yeah.
was like, "Hey, how can we work this through? Let's get a few people together. Let's,
Yeah.
this kid just went through like a really tough time, lost his dad, right?"
Right.
It was kind of like, this is the protocol,
That's
you
right.
know, where's the
Yeah.
tuition? Do we get the tuition? Like they
Right.
didn't care. They was shifting me around 6 different departments. And I
Yeah.
was like, these are the people. This
Yeah.
is the diploma that I'm working so hard to get. And these
Yeah.
people don't even care. But I'm just a number. I'm a
Yep.
student number,
That's right. Yeah.
right?
They're following the blueprint.
And then yeah, and then you talk about, like, the big corporations, how you're just one of 30,000, one of
Yeah.
40,000.
Yeah.
So I think there's something to be said about small to mid-sized businesses. You
Sure.
went to work for that CEO. Was it a small or was it a mid-sized business? Or
No,
wha
it was a large company. When I first started, yeah, working at that financial company, it was large. Big operation. But
but
going back,
he took you in, like, you were basically one.
yeah, listen, 2002 financial world was a lot different than what it is now,
Yeah.
right? Because there was within large companies, there were still like what we call today small little groups of businesses,
Right.
right? That's still trying to make it, right? The guy who started was the entrepreneur, right? He was doing it under the umbrella of a larger corporation, right? But that's what he was doing, right? So, those guys took me in. But going to your school thing for a second, right? Unfortunately or fortunately, they just the system is just following a system, right? And they're not looking to take detours out of that system to learn about what is this individual going through, right? So that's why for me, when some kids are trying to come for internships with us and they show me their resume, I don't even look at it. Like, I look at it like, okay, all this, they show 4.0 GPA, I'm at this school, that school. I tell them, like, that's all great to me, but I don't care about that. Like, I just care about, like, are you willing to work or not? Right? Like, are you willing to get your hands dirty or not? Because listen, I work a lot in a very unconventional ways, right? Like, people talk about work-life balance. I don't want to say I don't believe in it. I believe in work-life integration. Because listen, I'm gonna have to work Monday through Sunday. Like that's just how it is to be an entrepreneur. There's no off days when you're an
Yeah.
entrepreneur, when you have your own company, right? And I think that's what entrepreneurs, if you truly want to be an entrepreneur, that's what you have to realize is that it's a 24/7 gig. Now, yeah, you could, segment days and hours where you could have other stuff that you're doing, but you know, Bezos didn't have a day off starting Amazon, right? Like Zuckerberg didn't have a day off starting Facebook. Like he was committed to it, right? And that I think leads to the synonym of entrepreneurship is commitment, right? That's what entrepreneurship teaches a lot of people, regardless of failure or not, is can you commit to something? And I think that's where everyone struggles, right? Um, when I'm a big into mental work, like, podcasts, and I work with a performance coach and stuff like that. And one thing my coach always has said is it's the start that always stops people, right? You just have to start. Whatever you want to do, you just have to start it. Okay. That's going to the gym. Just go. Walk on a treadmill. Just start. Right. And it just the law of compounding, just one day after the other. Right.
Well,
So
do you know what they say the heaviest thing at the gym is?
the front door.
The front door. If
Yeah.
you can walk in through the front door, you can do it
Yeah.
all.
Yeah.
And so this podcast I started, I mentioned it a few times in my podcast, but 4 years ago I came up with this idea, kicked the can, didn't really do much. But I kept ordering stuff. I would order a microphone, I would order cable, I would order this, and it would just prolong, right?
Yeah.
And what happened was the start. So there's this thing where an entrepreneur will come up with an idea, research it, get it ready to start, and then they stay there because it's comfortable. Because before you start the race, there's nothing really that went wrong, right? Because the race hasn't started, and
That's
the
right.
race being starting the business.
That's
So
right.
I got stuck in that position because I was fearing failure, which is crazy because I've been an entrepreneur for 20 plus years,
Yeah.
right? And
Sure.
I've failed many a times,
Sure.
but I was in a position where I started fearing the failure more than I was valuing the why being
Yeah.
why I was starting it, right? My
Sure.
why was weak.
Yeah. But, like, let me talk about fear for a second. So, studying a lot of mental work, and I follow like the Human Lab and understanding a lot about our brain. Our brains haven't matured a lot since the age of 8, right? Like everything that we know today, Jimmy, is pretty much set from the at the age of 8, right? Our brains have like, yeah, we have more experiences and things like that, but all of that stems from what we've learned until the age of 8. So you talk about fear. That's a protection mechanism for our brain. Why? Because back in the day, our ancestors had was afraid of the tiger coming to eat them, right? So they had to protect. When people talk about fear today, they're protecting against the unknown,
Yeah.
right? And I'm going to relate this to like golf. When I play competitive golf, I catch myself doing this a lot, right? Because I'm human. I'm always afraid to hit a specific shot during a specific time in a tournament. And where I've made strides over the last few years is I say to myself, what's the worst that's going to happen? Right? Like, hopefully my wife's not going to leave me, right? Because of that golf tournament, right?
Yeah.
I have 2 rescued dogs. They're going to love me no matter what. My family's going to be there. I'm going to have like my life. Like nothing is changing, right? So to relate it to you, the fear that, the acronym for fear, right? It's like false evidence acting real.
Yeah.
That's the
So
acronym for fear, right? And everyone always has this fear of entrepreneurship and starting, and they're the fear of failure. So I say to them, what's the worst thing that's going to happen? So you fail. Okay. Right. Like, what's the worst thing that's going to happen? A tiger's not going to eat you. Right. You're not going to lose your family and all these types of things. So, the one thing I always say in relation to entrepreneurship is that fear and failure those are the F words, right? You have to get comfortable with the F words. Have to, right? Like when it's scary, you're probably on the right path,
yeah.
right? Like that's the thing. Because everyone who's been a successful entrepreneur of devices that we use, we're on Zoom right now, right? The guy who started Zoom took a chance,
Yeah.
right? We have iPhones and smartphones. Whoever started all of these technologies took a chance, right? And yeah, they succeeded, and many have failed, but they succeeded, right? So that's all it takes is one time,
So
right?
what's interesting is the why for me, and then initially was, well, I want to do a podcast, right? I listened to a lot of
Yeah.
people over the years and I wanted to do a podcast. But that
Yeah.
really wasn't the why. The why was if I can record entrepreneurs' lives, my why was to promote and educate entrepreneurship. And I
Yeah.
want to do it, and I'm doing it through storytelling, right? Through your
Sure.
life story. Okay. So if I can influence 1, 2, 5, 10, 100 people listening. And maybe it's not just only about entrepreneurship. Maybe they hear something about how to change their life or something about a new framework, a new mindset that they hear on this podcast that helps them. Well, I
Sure,
created value, right? Okay.
sure, sure.
I had a podcast I just recorded a week ago, and the entrepreneur was explaining that the reason he became an entrepreneur was to impact the world. And I
Mm-hmm.
said, how so? He goes, well, if I can become an entrepreneur and I can help other entrepreneurs
Mm-hmm.
build their businesses, well, how many people can they affect? And I never thought of that
Yeah,
way. I never thought
yeah.
about
Compound.
scaling and leveraging entrepreneurship to affect the human race.
Sure. Yeah,
Um, so that kind of just clicked a whole nother level of my
yeah,
brain,
yeah,
but I wouldn't have gotten there unless I started. That's
yeah,
how this all
yeah. You
starts.
always have to
Yeah.
start, and I think a lot of people also talk about why, like the why. It's like Simon Sinek's famous thing, right?
The why.
Understand your why. Everyone's why is different, and there's no right or wrong. Your why is going to be much different than mine, but your why is also going to change
That's
through
right.
every maybe 3, 5 years, but every decade of your life, your why is going to change. Like without knowing your immediate family, your why is your family, your son, your wife. Like my why is my family, right? Like before in my 20s, my why was to be successful, be wealthy, be rich, right? Have materialistic things. That was my why, right? Be good at golf. Now that I'm 43, my why ain't any of that. Like, yeah, I'm fortunate if I've achieved some of that success, right? But my why has changed. As I said earlier, my dad who's suffering with dementia, right? Very frail. My mom being his caretaker. I would give up everything I have for my dad to be healthy again. Everything, right? And a lot of people miss um well, I say underestimate health in all of this, right? So, like your podcast, The Founder's Journey, we're talking a lot about the entrepreneurship roadmap of the business side and some personal. I think also, Jimmy, a big part of this is also their health,
Yeah.
mental and physical. Okay. Because a lot of entrepreneurs in general are lonely. Like they go through mental spirals, right? Which then goes to health issues, right?
Yeah.
I think as you're an entrepreneur, the best investment you could always make is yourself
Yeah.
from a health perspective, right? So you could have 1,000 problems in the world. When you have health problems, you have one problem. Okay. For me, Jimmy, the last 10 years, I have taken a whole 180 shift on my personal health. Okay. Um, by meditation, obviously physical fitness, going to the gym, doing cold plunge therapy, doing steam, hot plunge, hot stuff therapy, um, mental work, right? Walking, being in the sun, right? Like those types of things, being at peace, eliminating people from my life, right? That's the other thing that a lot of people don't talk about. We have a lot of toxic energy that's around us, right? And we're afraid to let go. Why? Because as 8-year-olds, we need people to comfort us and take care of us. And we have that mindset till we get older. But as you get older, you realize like that guy is not good for my life, right? And we always want the big group of friends. As you get older, you want less people in your inner circle, right?
Some,
And that's where
some,
I've gone to. So I want to throw that in because with the entrepreneurship and a journey of a founder, what always gets lost is the mental and physical well-being of that founder, right? Look at Steve Jobs, right? Steve Jobs had all the money in the world. He couldn't buy one more day,
yeah.
right?
Yeah. It's
And
true.
and a lot of it was probably to the detriment of him growing Apple. Now he's the the sacrifices that he made for all of us on a technology perspective is unbelievable, right? But you think his family wanted that, right? We don't know that answer, right? But like, if you read some experts on his kids talking about him, like they don't really have nice things to say about him because he's always at work, right? Building Apple, and that detrimented his mental well-being and his physical well-being, which then led down to his family struggling with all
Yeah, I
that.
mean, because probably, he reached a point of success and then he was like, oh, well, I feel empty, I feel sad. I feel,
Yeah,
yeah. So
that
entrepreneurship is, yeah, it's a lonely path, because you against everyone else, you're saying, I have this vision, I'm going to pursue this journey, right? This
yeah,
path. And most people will tell you, oh, I think that's a bad idea. And they'll do it for two reasons. One, because they don't think you can do it. And two, because they
sure,
don't want you to surpass them in what they're
sure,
doing, right? Because it's the
sure.
crab in the bucket.
Yeah,
And they pull you down so you don't get
yeah,
out of the bucket, right?
that's right. Yeah,
Um, but I think that, and you set out to do that and you hit roadblocks and there's nobody, and that, that's why mentorship is really important, right?
100%.
Coaching, right? Meditation. I've been doing it on and off for, I would say, 10 years.
Good.
Um, breathing exercise is everything, right?
Yeah. Yeah, and
I
then, just lastly on the why part, you have your own personal why, but you also have to create a little tribe around you of people that want you to succeed, right? That's my circle today. Anyone within my circle and vice versa, I want them to succeed and they want me to succeed, right? There's no jealousy, there's none of that, right? And it's all about manifestations, right? You need to have positive energy around you to have positive manifestations. And, people talk about their why. I think a lot of people get lost on their why because they're chasing something that's not true to them, right? And that usually is financial, right? And as I said, to me, that's all changed now for me, right? Like, yeah, listen, who doesn't want financial success? But what does financial success lead to? In my opinion, it leads to just more opportunities that I could create for people around me. That's it.
That's it.
Right.
Yeah. I'm in a
That's it.
similar spot. Like, there's been times where there was money on the table and I left it. I walked away because it didn't feed into the real reason why I wanted the money. The money is to create more projects, to create more impact,
Yeah.
to create successful businesses, not just for me, but for the partners and everyone involved. Right.
Sure. Yeah.
So it's
Yeah.
really tough. It's tough to find people that you can vet that are genuinely all in it for everyone to be successful. It's hard.
Yeah. Boy, it's
I've seen,
rare. I mean, those are the rare breeds
yeah,
today, right? Because I think social media there's positive and negative effects. Then one negative effect of social media as the whole is comparison, right? Like, oh my God, that guy's having the greatest life, taking pictures on the beach, right? And all this stuff. But what people are real, that's just highlight reels,
yeah,
right? That's not their real life. But comparison is the thief of joy, right? And then you go into these mental spirals. Well, why is Jimmy having such a great life and I'm not? Right? What did I do? What is he doing that's different? And so yeah, the rare breed is having people around you that want you to succeed. And I realized that in the last few years, right? And I've been very picky and choosy on who I let into my world. Um, and that's by choice now, you know.
yeah, it's good, man.
Sure.
Shivam, this has been awesome.
Yeah, likewise.
I love it. This has been a high. My expectation was high, but this surpassed that expectation.
Good.
Okay.
Well, listen, first I want to congratulate you, man. Like it's been for everyone who's going to listen, I found Jimmy through LinkedIn, right? I saw your podcast that you did and I commented on it and I said, this is awesome. Going back to wanting my friends to succeed, even though we haven't been in touch in 20 years,
Yeah,
right?
long
20
time.
plus years. But I felt like we haven't missed a day,
It's
right?
true.
In 20 plus years of connecting. And that's the great thing about social media. But seeing you doing the podcast and seeing all that, right? I reached out to you and like, dude, we have to connect. So kudos to you, man. I love what you're doing and the platform that you're building. And obviously I'm happy to be a part of it and I want to see it succeed. So I'm going to be a resource for you in any way.
Thank you, man. I appreciate it. This has been great. All right,
Cool.
Shivam, have a great day, man. Thank you so much.